Greetings to all you wondrous wanderers on the web, this is Skeetermania, bringing you the first video on my channel. The topic of this entry, if the thumbnail didn't obviously, or subtly communicate to you, is on Pokemon. To give some background on myself, I'm a major Pokemon fan, and Pokemon related videos make up a large portion of what I watch on YouTube. One of the biggest attractions to me is accomplishing one of the tallest tasks in Pokemon, completing the Pokédex. The two biggest influences I have in this regard are J-Rose11 and John Stone. The former introduced me to Pokédex completion as a whole, and the latter never ceases to interest me with his Pokédex completion quests, be it through his Professor Oak or Catch 'em All challenges. If you're familiar with the aforementioned Catch 'em All challenges, the goal of the challenge I'm aiming to conquer is rather similar. I'm going to attempt completing the Pokédex using a variety of games, and by the end, I must have obtained the full living dex of every Pokemon in the dex. My challenge, however, differs in two ways. 1. I'm going to make it so that the entire living dex must exist in one game. While John Stone does trade a lot, the living dex encompasses all games he plays. 2, and more importantly, the stipulation that makes John Stone's similar challenges so gripping is that he has to complete the dex within a period of 24 hours. While I have no qualms tracking how much time is spent collecting Pokemon, my goal is not time-based. Instead, my goal is a lot more strenuous, if less daunting. Completing the Pokédex with as few games as possible. Yeah. While it may seem standard to start with Generation 1, I want to complete this challenge first in Generation 3 instead for several reasons. Firstly, it's the main generation I grew up with, considering my first Pokemon game was Ruby, obtained at the age of 6. Secondly, the sheer number of games in this generation, combined with the inability to transfer from Gen 2 to Gen 3, at least legitimately, means that finding the number of games needed to get every single Pokemon will certainly prove to be a daunting task. Thirdly, because of the mind-numbing idiosyncrasies involved with completing the dex, it allows me to go a bit in-depth about some of the rarely covered aspects of obtaining otherwise officially unobtainable Pokemon to this day, but we'll get to that later. Before we get into the main body of the video, it's imperative that I define the term game in this challenge's context. A game refers to any interactive tool I could use to obtain more Pokemon. This includes the main series, spin-offs, specific peripherals like the e-reader, and any event device needed to get an extra Pokemon to my game, like a distribution cartridge. To use an example indigenous to Gen 3, any Pokemon obtained through Pokemon Box Ruby and Sapphire, or even the Colosseum bonus disc will be counted, including the game used to receive the gift. As a result, that counts as 2 games. I will not be using cheating devices, as that would make the challenge completely boring and uninteresting to play, watch, or root. Simply put, there would be no point to this challenge if they were allowed. In addition, despite being willing to use glitches, such as cloning glitches and the ball duplication glitch in Colosseum, I won't be doing things like the Palmec glitch or any of its associated sub-glitches, particularly Glitzer popping. For those that don't know, it's a glitch which, when executed, can produce an egg which can be manipulated to hatch into whatever Pokemon you want. See these 2 informative videos by Werster, as he explains this glitch far better than I ever could. If I could perform this glitch, it would make this challenge too easy, so that's why it's disallowed. Now that we've gotten the criteria out of the way, it's time to get into the subject of the video. What is the least amount of games needed to complete the Gen 3 Pokédex? Keep in mind that I'll be defining this in 4 ways. 1. All 386 Pokemon, including Mythicals. 2. 383 Pokemon, discounting Mew, Celebi, and Deoxys, Jirachi's included for a reason that will be later explained. Subpoint 1. 383 Pokemon, discounting Mew, Jirachi, and Deoxys. 3. 382 Pokemon, discounting Mew, Celebi, Jirachi, and Deoxys, and 4. 380 Pokemon, discounting the former 4 in addition to Ho-Oh and Lugia, as they are not required to obtain the Dex Diploma. Finally, while there are games where collecting certain Pokemon can be kind of a pain in the ass, keep in mind that how rare they are is irrelevant to the final total. However, if more than one game has the same Pokemon, and it'd be much more convenient to get one in the game where it's more common, feel content to use that game. I know I sure will. To spare you the details of the exact locations of each Pokemon and their encounter probabilities, I'll leave a fittingly colored spreadsheet showcasing those specifics in the description. For each section, we'll start by focusing on the game where you can obtain the most Pokemon relative to a specific region, and then we'll work our way down trying to focus on the least amount of games needed to complete the rest. Without further ado, it's time to keep our cerebral active as we head into the analysis! To start, let's look at Kanto, as if there's already been enough pandering towards that region already. Since Fire Red and Leaf Green are a remix of the original Red and Blue, it stands to reason that they house the most amount of Kanto Pokemon. In fact, that individual total number is 137, but you'll need to reset to get that total number because of the missing Kanto starter, in addition to another cartridge to trade for retaining the Pokemon obtainable in a single playthrough. Regardless of which game you play, you'll be missing some Pokemon. If we trade between Fire Red and Leaf Green, we can get that total to 150. But for reasons we'll see later, it'd be best to find an alternative method to reaching this golden number. So let's see if we can minimize the number of games. First, let's try to cover Fire Red's unobtainables. XD Gale of Darkness has many Kanto Pokemon available, 66 in fact, so we'll start there. If we look at all available Pokemon in XD, the Sandshrew line, the Vulpix line, Weepinbell, Starmie, Magmar, and Pinsir are all covered. The two already mentioned Pokemon that are only available evolved in XD can simply be bred when traded to Fire Red, but you may have noticed that one of these lines has not been covered here. I'm so sorry for trying to revive a tired old 4chan meme, but...
Hey guys! Did you know that I'm the only Pokemon in all of Gen 3 you can only get in one game? Yeah, I know! It so doesn't make the journey more frustrating!
Yep, believe it or not, the Slowpoke family is not covered. As a result, we'll need to add Leaf Green in order to complete the Slowpoke line. That makes 3 games. Fire Red, Leaf Green, and XD. Now let's cover Leaf Green's unobtainables. Again, since XD gives us many Kanto Pokemon to work with, let's start there. XD gives us access to Arbok, Golduck, the Growlithe line, the Shellder line, Scyther, and Electabuzz. This leaves only the Oddish line. We could use Fire Red or a Hoenn game to cover that. The latter can also cover the Psyduck line. So for Kanto overall, we need Leaf Green guaranteed, but after that we can either use just Fire Red or a combination of XD and Fire Red or a Hoenn game. Our combinations thus include the following: Fire Red Leaf Green, Ruby Leaf Green XD, Sapphire Leaf Green XD, Emerald Leaf Green XD, and Fire Red Leaf Green XD. Now we get to the region contiguous to the original, that of course being Johto, without actually being in Johto. This is where things get a little more complicated. First, we'll analyze the amount of Johto Pokemon we can get with the existing combinations. Using both Fire Red and Leaf Green, 60 out of the 97 regularly obtainable Johto Pokemon are available. These guys are the ones we're gonna miss, so we need to find a way to minimize the number of necessary games. Continuing from the last combination, let's look at Emerald, which allows us to catch a lot of Johto Pokemon in some post-game areas. Luckily, as it turns out, all of those missing Johtomons are available in Emerald, be it through the extra areas of the Safari Zone, or some parts of the Battle Frontier. There is, however, one interesting exception. Because Fire Red and Leaf Green don't have an internal motherboard that uses energy from a CR1616 lithium battery, which is necessary for the game to track real time, Espeon and Umbreon are not obtainable. In the event that the Emerald cartridge has had its internal battery run dry, and you can't replace it easily, only one of these becomes available, and that's contingent on what time your house clock shows when the battery died. Because of this, if you're in this predicament, another game becomes required, and it can technically be any of the remaining 4, with the only caveat being that if the Ruby or Sapphire cartridge has also had its internal battery run dry, it must have been at a time corresponding to a period where Eevee can evolve into the counterpart of Emerald's locked to Johto evolution. Unfortunately, as it turns out, this is kind of a red herring. Some of those missing Pokemon are the Johto starters, and the only way to get them in Emerald is to complete the Hoenn Pokédex, which cannot be done with Emerald alone. This means that even if we had a working internal battery, we still need games to cover the Hoenn Pokemon we're missing. Or we could just use one of the GameCube games. Both of them cover the Johto starters, so either one is viable. Thus we have 2 combinations: Emerald, Fire Red, Leaf Green, Colosseum, and Emerald, Fire Red, Leaf Green, XD. The next combination was Leaf Green, XD, and a Hoenn game. For the sake of brevity and example, we'll use Emerald, as more Hoenn Pokemon are available in that game individually compared to Ruby and Sapphire. Using both Leaf Green and Emerald, we get access to all Johto Pokemon, except for these guys. With XD, we're able to cover Scizor, Elekid, and the Johto starters, but we're still missing the last 3. Thankfully, while we could use Fire Red, Colosseum will be a much more convenient option, as not only will we not have to constantly complete the Hoenn Dex in Emerald, nor go through Mount Battle 3 times in XD, screw around asshole, but we can easily cover the opposing Johto evolution. That makes 4 games regardless of game chosen: Emerald, Fire Red, Leaf Green, XD, and Emerald, Leaf Green, Colosseum, XD. The final combination was Leaf Green, Fire Red, and XD. This is kind of a springboard to the first scenario, Emerald excluded. XD covers quite a few Johto Pokemon, those being the Johto starters, the Mareep line, Espeon, Umbreon, the Pineco line, Gligar, Shuckle, the Teddiursa line, and the Houndour line. That leaves only 15 Johtomons left. We could try Colosseum, as that game gives us a large total of Johto Pokemon, although the actual total number is the exact same as Fire Red and Leaf Green, 60. Not only that, but we still don't have the following Mons obtained. Either Ruby, Sapphire, or Emerald will cover the remaining, but that would make 5 games, and Emerald covers all 15 of those missing Pokemon as well. so we don't even need Colosseum to begin with. This results in 4 games. In fact, there are 2 of the exact same combination of games as shown in the previous 2 scenarios. Yay? Finally, we get to the most faraway region of Hoenn. Time to really Hoenn our dex collecting skills. Yeah, pretty lame joke. But seriously, we're now coming to the Hoenn stretch.
Get on with it!
Okay, I'll move on! So for this section, progression will be much more streamlined, as we have 2 previous combinations to focus on, which are Emerald, Fire Red, Leaf Green, XD, and Emerald, Leaf Green, Colosseum, XD. Let's start with the former. Fire Red and Leaf Green only have 2 Hoenn Pokemon available, those being Azurill and Wynaut, both of which are baby Pokemon available via breeding with their respective incense, the former of which is only available in Leaf Green due to Marow's exclusivity there. This is unnecessary as both Pokemon are available in the Hoenn games, so let's move on to Emerald. As previously mentioned, Emerald renders you unable to collect certain Hoenn Pokemon, and there are some Pokemon you'll have to go through a few hoops to obtain due to force resetting, but I digress. So let's focus on a way to minimize the number of games needed to get the Emerald unobtainables. At first, one may think we need to use both Ruby and Sapphire, as 2 of those unobtainables are Zangoose and Lunatone, which are exclusive to Ruby and Sapphire respectively. However, we still have the GCN games to look towards. Colosseum gives us the Metatite line, but no more. So let's try XD. As it turns out, XD covers all 7 of those unobtainable Hoenn Mons, although some do require going somewhat out of the way, like with Surskit and Metatite. That said, I would be remiss if I didn't add this caveat. Much like with the Johto evolutions from before, things must be progressed differently if your Emerald cartridge's internal battery is dry. Shoal Cave is an optional dungeon whose gimmick revolves around time intervals determining its layout. There are different time intervals determining whether the cave will be at low tide or high tide. When the cave is at low tide, an exclusive icy room becomes open. This is the only area you can find the otherwise unobtainable Snorunt line. However, if your cartridge's internal battery is dry, and it's within a time interval denoting high tide, you can no longer get Snorunt unless you replace the battery. Should that not be something you're willing to risk, or you don't have the spare money to do so, thankfully XD also covers the Snorunt line. This makes for a total of 4 games: Emerald, Fire Red, Leaf Green, XD. So it just seems we come full circle. Now let's examine the combo that is left. We already know by this point that Emerald and XD cover all Hoenn Pokemon, but if we take what we found out from the previous regional sections, we find out that Leaf Green, Emerald, and XD cover all Kanto Pokemon. Colosseum can cover all the Johto Pokemon missing, as can Fire Red. So, if you want to collect all Pokemon in the Gen 3 Pokédex, not counting those that aren't required, we have 2 viable combos that are equally the smallest possible. Emerald, Fire Red, Leaf Green, and XD, and Emerald, Leaf Green, Colosseum, and XD, making for a total of 4 games. Now this section will be divided into 3 portions, one of which has a sub-portion. Portion 1, all 386 Pokemon. Portion 2, 383 Pokemon. Sub-portion 1, 383 Pokemon. And Portion 3, 382 Pokemon. Let's go in reverse order and save the hardest for last. For the 382 portion, and for that matter, every single portion, we need Ho-Oh and Lugia. As previously mentioned, they aren't required for dex completion as they are elusive to get. Let's refer to a previous combination of ours, Emerald, Fire Red, Leaf Green, XD. XD allows us to snag and purify the Shadow Lugia, so that makes 381. However, without access to long dead events and being unwilling to use cheating devices or hacks, we will be unable to obtain our favorite Rainbow Early Phoenix with this combo. The only way to obtain Ho-Oh in all of Gen 3 without cheating, hacking, or using questionable alternative methods, hint hint, is by completing Mount Battle in battle mode with your own story team after purifying all Shadow Pokemon. This means that we need to add Colosseum to the list. But since we know from before that Colosseum covers all Johto Pokemon that aren't in Emerald, Leaf Green, and XD, we can X Fire Red altogether, thus forming the other smallest combo of Emerald, Leaf Green, Colosseum, and XD. For our second portion, we'll start with the main portion, this one including Jirachi, but not the other Mythicals. As a baseline combination, we'll use the tried and true one from Portion 1. If you're a fortunate person who still happens to have a Colosseum bonus disc, or if you can find one online at a reasonable price, you can get access to the secret Jirachi. Unlike a certain other Mythical, this Jirachi can be transferred once per save file of the game that receives it. Speaking of which, unfortunately, this Jirachi can't be transferred to Emerald, it can only be transferred to a copy of Ruby or Sapphire, meaning we need to add 2 more games to the total. We now have the combo of Ruby or Sapphire, Emerald, Leaf Green, Colosseum, Colosseum Bonus Disc, and XD. But let's see if we can minimize this total. So we absolutely need Ruby or Sapphire, which gives us access to 125 Hoenn Pokemon. However, we also need to use both Ruby and Sapphire, or one of those 2 in Emerald, so we can cover the Lati duo. Colosseum and XD are needed in this portion, so stuff like the Johto starters, the Legendary Beast, and the Snorunt line, assuming your internal battery is dry, are easily covered. And Leaf Green is necessary, because you know. So we're still looking at a total of 6 games. Well, that was pointless. By the way, if you're European or Australian, you can get a Jirachi from Pokemon Channel and transfer it to Ruby or Sapphire, but the total amount of the games doesn't change. Now for this sub-portion. Here's where things get pretty xenogenic, so to speak. Being the birthplace of Pokemon, it stands to reason that Japan gets all the cool stuff that the general public everywhere else completely misses out on. Part of that cool stuff includes the elusive Japanese Colosseum Bonus Disc. While it doesn't include Jirachi, it includes something even better. A time-traveling onion not fairy! For some reason, this is the only way to legitimately get Celebi in Gen 3, and the fact that it's only available in a Japanese language product before the 7th generation of gaming means that when it comes to the games already brought up, the only situation in which the previous amalgamation of games can be combined is if those games are their Japanese language counterparts. There are a few stipulations, but there are also liberties. On one hand, getting the Celebi requires the player to catch and purify all 48 Shadow Pokemon, and, by association, a Japanese Colosseum disc. On the other hand, unlike with the Jirachi in the US, Celebi can be transferred to any GBA game as long as the player has beaten the Elite Four and saved in the Pokemon Center. Unfortunately, this can only be done up to 48 times, unlike with the Jirachi, so it may be best to put an asterisk next to this sub-portion. Since we can transfer Celebi to any GBA game, this means that the total amount of games for this sub-portion is 5 as opposed to the main portion 6, those being the Japanese Emerald, Leaf Green, Colosseum, Colosseum Bonus Disc, and XD games. Finally, we get to the big one, 386. This is where we run into a brick wall. Let's assume here that the games played were the international versions, in which case the ones unaccounted for are Mew, Celebi, and Deoxys. And it's here that I need to add this disclaimer. Now we've reached the legal gray area. Given how widely debatable the legality of this topic is, it's totally possible that this would leave me, or anyone that wants to take this risk, liable for a lawsuit by Nintendo, as they have gone on record saying that this action is not acceptable, profited or not. That said, the fact that the associated items are able to be legally sold on eBay does mean that this may be a law-abiding practice. Nonetheless, if you feel this is tampering too much with the law, especially if you live in the UK, you may skip to the evaluation stage. Otherwise, be my guest. The timestamp for that will be shown in the video and is also in the description. Watch at your own risk. Okay, looks like we've got balls of steel then. So back when Gen 3 was the main generation, distribution cartridges were given out to players in order to receive specific event items and Pokemon. As of this point, obviously these cards are no longer officially distributed, but thanks to the efforts of some people on Digiex.net, these event Pokemon can be legitimately obtained again. Let's take, for example, the Dole Deoxys event. I'm so sorry if I butchered the name, or stole from False Gaming. It was distributed at the TV Toy Museum in the Netherlands during the Pokemon Fan Days 2006 from May 25th to May 28th of the same year as a gift to celebrate the release of the 7th movie, which goes by the name Dole Deoxys in Dutch. If you're playing on an emulator, you can download the ROM and receive this gift, but you must either change the variables in the ROM to account for the date threshold for when this event was officially distributed, or modify the function itself. However, as said above, this only applies if you're playing on emulator, which seemingly disables the ability to trade. If you want to go the lengths of having a whole living dex on a cartridge, like I plan to, fortunately some old distribution cartridges can still be found online, but at a pretty damning price. Also, if the distribution cartridge isn't connected to a GBA, it's a clear sign that the cart is fake, so be wary of that as well. Other notable event Pokemon that can be transferred from a distribution cartridge include the Aurora Ticket Deoxys and Aura Mew events. If you own a GBA Flash cartridge, like Easy Flash, and move a downloaded .gba ROM and its .sav into that flash cart and loaded legit Pokemon GBA game onto another GBA, you can still trade between those two games, thus retaining your living dex. As stated much earlier in the criteria section of the video, we're going to count the downloaded distribution cards, or legit distribution cards, as another game, as they technically count as event devices. The flash cart, on the other hand, will count in tandem with the GBA ROM, so both combined count as one game. If a GBA game and the GBA ROM are running the same game, we'll count the duplicate as the second game. For example, if both the GBA game and the ROM are that of Emerald, each counts as one game. I found that there are a total of 5 events at max that house the last 3 Pokemon. 4 of them are straightforward: the aforementioned Dual Deoxys, Aurora Ticket Deoxys, Aura Mew, and the now mentioned Mystery Mew events. If you have a flash cart, download the ROM of the distribution cart and have 2 GBAs, a legit link cable, and a GBA cart that corresponds to the language of the distribution you're using. You can download the .gba file and follow the instructions to get that Pokemon onto your GBA cart. We only need 1 per mythical though, so we can minimize the number of required ROMs and distribution carts to 2. Celebi, on the other hand, is a different story. Through all the research I've done on Pokemon availability via download links, I haven't been able to find such a link. I was, however, able to find a .sav file containing multiple events, and it contains an amalgamation of every released Gen 3 event. I haven't opened this file, nor can I as I haven't downloaded the GBA emulator, but I found out that this file contains most of the Pokemon associated with the events. Each of these events is separated by boxes, and for the sake of clarity and separation by event, each box will count as one game. The closest Celebi event I found came from the 10th anniversary Journey Across America event. While there are many other Pokemon that can be covered through these events, I'm only going to focus on the JAA box. The Kanto starters, the legendary birds, the Johto evolutions, the legendary beasts, Latios and Latios, and for some reason Blaziken, are all notable Pokemon included in this box. Looking at our previous list, however, this won't change a thing. So now we have the following: a GBA ROM with a flash cart, 2 ROMs with distribution carts, and a .sav file with 1 box. This adds a total of 4 games to our game total, making for a total of 10. Ruby or Sapphire, Emerald, Leaf Green, Colosseum, the Colosseum bonus disc, XD, a GBA ROM, a Mew distribution cart, a Deoxys distribution cart, and the .sav files JAA box. I should also add that if you want to be as broad as possible and count the entire .sav file as one game, this drastically lowers the amount of required games. While I won't go into detail about what those cover Pokemon are, I will say that a Kanto game or XD is still necessary for a select few Pokemon, like the Caterpie line and Weedle line. However, neither XD nor Colosseum are needed, as Ho-Oh and Lugia are available via certain events, and the availability of the Johto starters also means Emerald, and by extension, either XD or Ruby and Sapphire, aren't explicitly needed for them. I don't know what the actual title is, so I'll let you decide for yourself. Now we've finally reached the end. Let's go over each smallest combination. For the 386 campaign, we have 2 combinations: Emerald, Fire Red, Leaf Green, and XD, and Emerald, Leaf Green, Colosseum, and XD. For the 382 campaign, we have Emerald, Leaf Green, Colosseum, and XD. For the 383 International campaign, we have Ruby or Sapphire, Emerald, Leaf Green, Colosseum, the Colosseum bonus disc, and XD. For the 386 Japanese campaign, we have Japanese copies of Emerald, Leaf Green, Colosseum, Colosseum bonus disc, and XD. Finally, for the 386 campaign, we are left with the absolute cornucopia of Ruby or Sapphire, Emerald, Leaf Green, Colosseum, Colosseum bonus disc, XD, GBA ROM, a Mew distribution cart, a Deoxys distribution cart, and a .sav files Journey Across America box. Our number of games for each campaign are 4, 4, 6, 5, and 10 respectively. Finally. So that should do it for this video. As I said earlier, I'm in the process of doing a Least Games Pokédex run for Gen 3, and the route I'm taking is the 386 route. Throughout this mind-numbing catching process, I'll be streaming footage live from Twitch, which you can reach from the video description or my channel description. Until that happens, I will need to replace the internal battery in my Emerald cartridge, get a way to play GCN games on my Wii, and find a way to record GBA footage, as I don't have a GameCube GBA player disc. Oh boy, those things are so expensive. If you want to do a run of the other campaigns, you already know what you'll need. All sources used to help the rest of the video are in the description, but be warned that the Digiex download links may come with a risk. This follow-up video will be released quite some time from now, as while I've already done the research for Pokemon locations, I still need to do research and multiple playthroughs of each involved game in order to optimally route this journey. As a final note, I'd like to give a special thanks to Insane Nutter and Professor Oak of Digiex for providing simple ways to get Mythicals in Gen 3. You guys are awesome. Anyways, the end has been reached. If you enjoyed this Odyssey preparation, be sure to leave a like and share this video with a close brain-fueled friend. If you're interested in watching this kind of content, my channel also has a playlist for commentaries, long and short form, and a playlist for other miscellaneous material. In terms of social media and other channel amenities, I have a Patreon, and if you want early access to the content I produce, consider pledging as well. Additionally, you can consider following me on Twitter for stream highlights, updates on new videos, and other leisurely quotes. If you want to mingle in a more controlled environment, consider following me on Discord. I also post updates to my channel and anything else I produce on my Amino page. All these social media accounts can be found in both the video description and my channel description. Above all, if you want to continue getting your cranium stimulated, consider subscribing to my channel. You can expect YouTube uploads on a largely weekly basis. If you want to see more videos in the same vein as this one, consider checking out the aforementioned JRose11 or Johnstone. In particular, these are the videos I recommend the most. This is Skeetermania saying, stay smart, stay safe, and examine your limits. Take care, everybody!